Ladies and gentlemen, yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson Football Channel. You guys are very, very lucky, you know. You had Joey Knight on here last week, and this week we have got the big dog back on the channel for the first time in the year 2025. Josh, mate, welcome back. We're fresh off of a win against West Ham. Your smile is making me smile. We're feeling good, aren't we?
Yeah,
This is a
it's very
brilliant
good to be
place
back
to
on the
be.
channel, mate, and it's very good to be back on after winning, because I think if we'd lost that game, I would have been in a very different mood. In fact, I remember sitting at Stamford Bridge last night, what was it, about 60-odd minutes, and just thinking, oh, God, this isn't going to be good. Potter's going to win, and everything that I've said about Potter's going to come true. Still rate him, by the way. Still quite like Graham Potter, in a weird way.
I think he's one of those guys you just want him to do well, don't you? Like, I think... I wanted it to work at Chelsea, of course. I don't want any manager to ever come through the door and be like, right, I've got a bad feeling about him, so let's get him out the door ASAP Rocky. It never goes that way. Maybe it does for some people. Certainly isn't that way for me. But even Graham Potter made some interesting comments last night. I don't miss being here. Yeah. That is a pretty... I mean, I didn't have Graham Potter down as, like, the comedian. I thought, like, that terribly awkward moment, I'll put it up for you lot now. That moment was a disaster when he talks about winning the effing Champions League. Like, he's trying really hard there to be funny, but I feel like there's this underlying tone of honesty about what he said about not missing being here. Do you think it's
What do you think he's talking about?
I mean, I want to discuss this with you today because I think there is a lot to be said right now about... I'm going to explain my position, and I think it's good to have somebody else to bounce off of when I say this, because there's a very big difference in my feeling right now between wanting to back Maresca, especially after last night, because management-wise, he was class. Back in Maresca, back in the squad, but then having this just like deep-rooted frustration with the club as a whole, and... like, a lot of people sometimes seem to think that those two things can't go hand in hand. But I can't help but believe that those comments from Potter actually do hold some kind of semblance within the club about how difficult it must be to actually operate when there's just so much chaos going on. And would you say, when you look at the transfer window that we've just had, do you think it is difficult for Maresca? Do you think it is hard for him to actually really imprint himself on the squad and do what he wants to do with them because he's not got as much control as, say, a manager would expect or like at a football club? Is it that deep?
I just think it's more about chaos, about not having sort of like a steady footing. And let's use a particular example. Obviously, we've signed João Felix in the summer. He comes and plays for 6 months, and let's be honest, when I say plays, let's do that in inverted commas, because he's barely played. He's played in the Conference League. He's looked fine, and when he comes on off the bench in the Premier League, he often tears up games and looks really, really good as well, to be fair. And then, you know, talk about amazing games João Felix has played. He played pretty well against West Ham in his first spell, didn't he? Do you remember that game? He was fucking brilliant in that game.
I do, he was.
So this is actually a bit of a personification of how, you know, I think the directors of football are really failing the football club. In that, how can a manager like Maresca or Graham Potter or whoever is in at the present time, how are they ever meant to plan if we're just sort of doing this sort of Panini trading cards, you know, system of running football clubs? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like...
we're in the school playground.
We are, and we're just trading and trying to get that shiny, and eventually we might stumble across one, but I don't think there's a lot of method to the madness, and that's what concerns me. And even the player like Vega, who we were told really wanted to be there, had immense technical quality and was going to grow and develop, again, shipped off on loan. He'll come back and potentially still be in the squad. But it's really difficult because one moment you've got a really stacked squad full of loads of really young, talented players. Then now in January, we're looking a bit threadbare. We're looking like, you know, we're a Nicholas Jackson injury away from being, you know, only having one striker available who's, you know, a 19-year-old guy. So for me, I do feel very sympathetic towards the managers, because I do think the directors of football at the moment, they're playing a different game from what we're used to. And like, I don't think the chaos is good for the football club.
I think it's difficult again. Like I mentioned about trying to be able to like express my joy to see Chelsea win, the desire to see us win, and I'm seeing a lot of people, particularly on Chelsea YouTube, social media and whatever, mention that it does paper over the cracks when we get these wins, and I'm inclined to agree with a lot of them, because I made a video yesterday discussing about how this was a 3-hour window of time that is defining of Chelsea's season, but we just don't know it yet. That win against West Ham showed what we could do, what we can do with the calibre of players that we have at our disposal for the starting 11, but also that lack of serious business. And I say that, and I feel sorry for Matisse Mugu, because he might be a serious player, but it ain't serious business, is it? It's not Chelsea making a statement like City spending 250 million to make sure that they get back in the Champions League. I think this will either be, okay, fair enough, we've got enough about us, Maresca's got enough quality, he can get us over the line, or it will be defined by, we didn't sign a new striker, we didn't bring in serious reinforcements when it comes to defenders. Colwill not putting in a serious shift yesterday, like we were talking about Mark Gurhey at the start of the window, recalling Trev back straight away, but then even he's dropped for that game.
Benched, yeah.
Like, make it make sense to me. Is it Maresca like trying to showcase to the owners who'll be watching from above, being like, well, you know what? You did recall Trev back, but he still ain't good enough to start for me every week. I needed a quality centre-back. Like, where do you think the biggest hole was that we didn't address in that window?
For me, if I'm being honest, with Trev coming back, I'm not particularly concerned with the centre-back position, because bear in mind we've still got Badia Shield to come back, who, you know, has had a up and down sort of time at Chelsea, but overall I think is a decent player, and I think he'll still be a squad player at the start of next year as well, to be fair. So centre-back I wasn't too worried about. I do think, and people will laugh at me for saying this, I think Jorgensen is the future of the goalkeeping position at Chelsea. So again, I wouldn't necessarily have gone out and bought a goalkeeper, especially in January. Now, you could argue that and say Kobel was an option. But I think there's a general point here about what players can you actually get in January. You know, what level of player can you actually get? What a club's going to sanction? And I think more often than not, I would rather err on the side of caution and not just sign a random player. For example, an Axel Disasi, which we bought in a panic, bearing in mind that Trevor had an injury, and we bought a player that we quite frankly knew was never really going to be good enough. A player that was a stopgap. So I really don't want to do these. Like, it's nice, mate, because you and I know you love transfers as much as I do. Right? I love a transfer. I sit there and watch news, and
the gossip columns are fun.
I'm all over it, and I'm know, yesterday I was all over Twitter, and I was loving every single second of it, right? So, and much like all the guys and girls watching, they'll be the same, right? But I think you do also have to have a little bit of caution here, where you're like, do you know what? If there aren't any really good options, let's just be smart about this, and then really go for it in the summer. I think Man City have broken the bank, and I think they're going to be in big trouble. They've spent 250 million already, you know, in January. Like, they know they're screwed, right? And so they're probably just going to spend their way out and pay ridiculous fines and just get on with it, right? But I do think we need to be smart, and I think in the summer there will be better opportunities, and that's the operative word to go for. But then to answer your question, really, mate, I would have been going for either a left winger or a striker. And bearing in mind how good Mark Yu looked last night, and let's touch wood on everything, we don't know the status of that injury. He looked like he ripped his fucking groin, by the way that I saw him do the splits. If I had done that, mate,
it did look seriously peak. Yeah. No, that's me done for 2025 is a write-off, okay? Just staple me to this chair and I'm not moving, and I've got Riverside Pro locked in. That's the thing, he's a very athletic guy, but like you mentioned it, did you think Mark Yu was good against West Ham? Because I can't say I agree.
No,
more so,
why?
Because he didn't really do anything. Like, I feel like it
you're
was
a disgrace, George. You're a disgrace.
I mean, he got 13 touches of the ball, which was 5 less than Nicholas Jackson got. Yeah. And I just think, like, I love Mark Yu, I do. I loved him on the pre-season tour. I was like, bloody hell, this guy ain't on pre-season. He's on smoke, mate. This guy is running around the flipping America as if he wants to do marathons per day to cross from north to west to east to south, all this stuff. He was crazy. And he is crazy. He's erratic. And the fact that Chelsea are transfer window, and we still haven't got a clinical box presence. Like, Mark Yu could become a great footballer.
Yeah.
But I just believe now that Chelsea have absolutely missed the boat here, and I think we've seen the same thing. Like, we're still fourth in the Premier League. We're saying we've kind of exacerbated it a little bit and said it's just a bad season. It's not a bad season. It's going very well. It could go great. But what I wanted to discuss with you today, Josh, really is, like, is that really a make or break transfer window for Chelsea? Like, if we don't get top 4 this season, do the likes of Cole Palmer start to look at this and be like, hang on a minute, what am I doing here? I am one of the best players in world football. And in January, we sat there before the game at the end of the transfer window when deadline day was here and upon us. We were 6th. Yeah, we won that game. But I look at the players around me. I look at this squad. I look at the manager that we've got. Who I think Palmer backs Maresca, I do. But is Palmer looking at this thinking, are they serious? Like, does he look at Matissa Mugu coming through the door and think, well, yeah, he's going to help me get into the Champions League next season. I'll back him.
Yeah.
Do you think the players that are actually good enough see this as something that's actually moving somewhere in the right direction?
I do. This has been actually a question of the January transfer window. Do we have the same pool that we once did at Chelsea, right? And we know we lived through transfer windows where we could have signed anyone that we wanted.
Yeah.
And there were windows in which there were some, Galacticos that we could never have ever achieved. But more often than not, we got our way, didn't we? I still believe that Chelsea has a massive pool. We're still a massive football club. We're in London. We still have the Champions League memories that we always once did. And I do think we are still going to be, and this is, a big if, but I still think we are going to be a Champions League team. And also I do think we'll be a title challenging team, right?
This is good. I wanted this. I need this.
I think we will. No, I think we will. Because, look, it's very easy at the moment to sort of go, the directors of football don't know what they're doing. We don't have the Galactico signings that we once did. We don't have the sort of world-class players that we once did. But quite frankly, all of the players that we're buying have the potential to be world-class. And we still have players that are world-class right now. I think Moises Caicedo is one of the best DMs in the entire world. And
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I concur.
Yeah, and then you look at Cole Palmer, again, absolutely world-class. On his day, could be the best, number 10 in the world, really, let's be honest. And I still think there are players that could develop and grow, like, players that aren't even at the football club. Andre Santos, quite frankly, tearing it up in Ligue 1, looks unbelievable, will be a fantastic player. And by the way, they've confirmed that he will be, back in Chelsea in the summer, which is a big set of news. And, as much as Levi Colwill is having a dip right now, I think that Levi Colwill was wanted by every single Premier League club, and probably abroad as well at a very high level. So, again, we do have players that are going to come in and become that sort of level of player. And also, I think that we will scout the next level of talent to get that. But what we're not going to do, and what we sort of have to resign ourselves to, is we're not going to be signing... we're not going to be signing Mbappe because, quite frankly, we can't afford it. And quite frankly, it's not part of our strategy. So we kind of need to sort of just acknowledge that what we're going to do is we're going to build and grow with players. And sometimes we'll find a player like Cole Palmer who's ready now at 20 years old and we'll just tear it up in the way that he does. Because, quite frankly, if you are world class, by the age of 20, you're kind of going to be good enough. Do you know what I mean? And so I think the era in which we're just signing the Lukakus of this world for 100 million, I think that's over. But if you look at that signing in particular, is that actually a bad thing? I think as much as we signed some very good players at a high level, we also had a lot of flops. And would you rather spend, 25, 30 million pounds on a 21-year-old that might become a flop? Or would you rather have 300 grand of wages on a Lukaku that is a flop? Look how long it took us to sell him.
I do think that there's a lot of underlying question marks about how Chelsea managed to butcher so many top players. Yeah. I think I'm one of the firm believers that Fernando Torres' time at Chelsea was not as big of a failure as people made it out to be, purely because of the importance of some of the goals that he scored, which can sometimes outweigh the number, quality over quantity, as we're always told everywhere in life and every facet and asset of life. But I do agree with what you're saying to an extent. But I also think that we are hanging so much on the importance of the model and that structure, and this is how we operate now, this is how we do business, that I just can't believe that we could just completely miss the point so heavily by not finishing in the Champions League. If we're talking about constantly trying to make sure that the books are balanced and we're trying to be careful with this and we've searched for loophole there, loophole there, loophole there, surely there becomes a point where you look at that squad, and that's why I ask about Palmer, because Palmer knows that there's probably not going to be a connection that needs to be built with Mark Guiu up front. Do you know what I mean? Like, even Nkunku, when you see all season long, right, Nkunku and Guiu have been kind of chasing after minutes in Conference League games, and they've been often playing together. I've never seen two players that look so far apart in terms of like chemistry and like unity together, because I just wonder how many of the players are actually just looking around at the moment and thinking, I don't really know where I stand here. I think it's telling. I did actually not plan that one in advance, that Matisse told us.
Amazing.
Told us?
He's
told
lying
us.
as well, by the way. He's told me before the recording that he was going to do that about 16 minutes in.
I was so happy. I always had a smile on my face. I couldn't get my words out. I'm one of those guys that would tell a joke, but I'll be laughing before I finish it. I'll be like, nah, you guys aren't ready. No, hang on a minute. Hang on. You're not ready for this. Matisse rejected us. Do you think that's true? Because that's why I ask about Palmer thinking are these lot serious.
It's funny, right? Because you set this up with, we need to sign ready-made players that are ready now, that are world-class level, to make sure that Cole Palmer stays. And by the way, my final point on Cole Palmer is he's got a 75-year contract. And quite frankly, we don't need to sell him. So, and also,
but he will want to go.
My final point on that is, if he wants to go, he's probably got 2 clubs or 3 clubs in the world that he could, 1, afford his wages, and 2, where he would get guaranteed success. Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, and then maybe going back to Man City, which I don't think would happen. So, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, if you want to chuck, £300 million on the table to buy his services, then go for it. But
that's a fair, rational point, to be fair.
I don't see it happening. Yeah, I don't see it happening. But on Tell, right, he's 19. We've got no idea how good he is. And also, to go down this route, you need to buy players for a system. Tell's system really is best as the Man United number 10, or what I would call a Thomas Tuchel number 10. He would be in behind a striker. He's not really a winger. He kind of wants
basically
to be a
Nkunku.
Yeah, basically Nkunku. Yeah, exactly. So really, I don't know how well he would have fit in the system anyway. Did he reject us? He probably did reject us. But quite frankly, the joke's on him, because now he's at Tottenham. So
he's really cooked himself there, hasn't he? Like, he was either going to go to Manchester. The Man United fans, I've seen some hilarious videos in the past 24 hours. Man United fans are flabbergasted, but it's also telling for them too, isn't it? Like they're like, oh my word, we're that bad too that someone will go to Tottenham under Ange, then go to Man United. Like, I guess I wanted to also just feel better. I said this to Joey last week. I was like, mate, please make me feel better about Chelsea. Please put me in a better mood. And what you're saying about Palmer also does make a lot of sense. As much as we can anticipate that if things don't go the way that we have kind of just hang our hat on right now, we've got to get Champions League, or we haven't, so the club have said, but we know it. We do need to be back in the Champions League. It's where we belong. It's where we should be. And it's where we should be aspiring to be. But now that we do have the squad that we've got, I said, again, in yesterday's video, that it's a weaker squad now than at the start of January. I think that's undeniable when you've got very few players coming in and so many of them now gone. What do you think is going to be the case now for Maresca? Because Nkunku was looking like mentally he'd checked out, he'd gone elsewhere, came on pretty much as a left winger against West Ham, and I think he was almost a passenger in the game. He got on the ball a fair amount because we were spreading the ball out while we were playing with width. But do you think it's going to be a big job now for Maresca to actually utilise Nkunku and find something for him, especially if Jackson is injured? And I mean, it's 8 games in a row now without a goal. That is a serious drought for any striker. So do you think there is a chance that Nkunku could once again just have a run of games now that could actually be defining for him staying at Chelsea long term? Like, could the whole narrative around him change now? And what do you think needs to happen from Maresca for that to actually be the case?
I think Maresca needs to be braver and we've talked about this several times, and also you've said this quite a few times on Six Things We Learn. He needs to make the subs quicker, right? And he needs to change the game quicker. But not only does he need to do this in-game, I think he needs to make braver decisions in his lineup, right?
Yeah.
I personally feel that Jadon Sancho has moments in which he looks, like a world beater, but he also has several games where he really does absolutely nothing. And I think that West Ham game, I'm glad he did get hooked when he got hooked, because he was anonymous, right? And I think actually, if we're going on pure technical ability right now, Christopher Nkunku is a better technical player than a Jadon Sancho. They play in different roles, but I think Nkunku is better than him. Now, he's not a natural left winger, and I don't think in actually really he wants to be playing out wide. I think Christopher Nkunku wants to be a number 8 really, or a number 10, a half and half. But I think Maresca needs to go right. Noni Madueke, if he's not putting the ball in the back of the net, Neto gets a run of games, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, Nkunku needs to get a chance, or we need to play a system whereby Cole Palmer and Nkunku can play in the same team. A lot of people have said that means that Cole Palmer goes over to the right. He needs to change the system, and I think what I've seen from Maresca that I quite like is that within different games, based on the different opposition, he will change the approach. So, he'll move someone in a different position and whatever, right? But I think he needs to sort of take that and put it on steroids a little bit, go a bit crazy, go, put your tracksuit bottoms and Maresca on and go crazy. But I think he needs to rip up the system a bit. Like, for example, Christopher Nkunku comes on. Jadon Sancho was a very left-sided left winger, very high and wide. Christopher Nkunku comes on. He's in the left pocket, half space, and then Cucurella goes on and plays as a left wing back. We look way better. We looked way better. So
the
I do
whole
think
game changed at that point, didn't it?
Yeah, and really, I think Pedro Neto changed the game more than anything. But
yes,
Pedro Neto's ability to go to not do an Arjen Robben and just do the same thing over and over again, cut inside and shoot on your left foot off the right, which Noni Madueke does over and over again, enabled us to do different things in the other side of the pitch. So I actually think that's proof that Maresca knows what he's doing from a tactical basis. He did change the game. We did go on and win it. But what I hope he does is I hope he learns from that and goes, sometimes I need to be braver in those team selections.
So would you say, because I felt this too, like the stark difference in the intensity levels, and like Neto looked like a guy that wanted to prove a point.
Yeah.
I think Nkunku, given more opportunities and not like these like fleeting 5 minutes here, fleeting 10 minutes there, like if Jackson got hoiked after 50 minutes for basically the second game in a row, do you just now start Nkunku through the middle and be like, well, give me that same intensity that Neto's done when he comes in, knows he's not been playing, wants to prove a point because he knows that effort gets him starts, and goals obviously gets him starts too now because he scored a good goal that he basically made himself and then finished it off as well. Do you think it could be the same for Nkunku? Do you think Nkunku is that kind of player that we all agree, like I've seen you speak about it, Joey speak about it, everyone at Chelsea creating content could see that Nkunku, as much as we all think he's got quality, he's got ability, he looked like he checked out. So now, is it a case of, look at that performance and how good we were for the last half an hour. Would you say that Maresca should now just pick that team and start games?
Yeah. Well, before we do that, I've got 2 commandments. They're my Chelsea commandments. They're written in stone tablets on my wall. The first commandment is, thou shalt not start Robert Sanchez in goal. That's the first.
Oh, praise your holy book, mate.
The second commandment is, thou shalt not play Christopher Nkunku as a striker because he doesn't want to play there. It's a bit of a long one. So that's my truth. So when you're talking about playing Christopher Nkunku, even if Nicholas Jackson is injured, I don't want Christopher Nkunku there. It wastes him. He doesn't want to play there. He drops deep, and it affects our entire game. Christopher Nkunku, if he's playing, he plays in 2 positions. He either plays as a winger and probably on the left side, right? Bearing in mind we've got depth on the right-hand side, and I don't think either of those boys should be replaced, per se, for Nkunku. Or he plays either instead of one either or, and you're going to laugh at this, but either or Cole Palmer or Enzo. So there are games, right, in which you need to break down the low block. let's be honest, we play with two very distinct units. You've got a defensive unit in which Caicedo is part of, and you've got an attacking unit in which Enzo is part of.
Yes.
And really, we don't have a midfield. We just play this system. It's my biggest bugbear of our entire tactic at the moment. We don't really have a midfield. But if you're going to play that way, let's just fucking go for it in some games and put Nkunku where Enzo is. Because quite frankly, he does similar stuff. He probably isn't as good as tackling, but I don't think Enzo's tackling is particularly his strong suit either. So
no, he does bring a level of just like coverage though, doesn't he? Like I don't know if Nkunku's got enough running in him. Like when I saw that attempt to press in, it gave me a good bit of faith that you and I could possibly get a run out there for Chelsea before we hang up our boots forever. You know, that was not pressing at all from Nkunku.
Yeah, there are games that, like, I think actually Enzo was very good last night in terms of the...
I thought he was the best player on the pitch, personally.
Yeah, the battling, the way he got the ball back in certain occasions. He was what I expected from sort of like a dogged midfielder when we signed him, really. I thought he was going to be that sort of player. But I do think there are games in which we were struggling. For example, the West Ham game last night, we were struggling to break them down. They got two lines. They had a 5 and a 4. It was very difficult to break them down. In those scenarios, I want Nkunku to pop up in the half spaces and be able to sort of dictate it, do what he needs to do. Really, if we're playing 2 banks of 4 or a 5 and a 4, you don't need Caicedo and an Enzo. Caicedo can do the job. You can have Cole Palmer and Nkunku splitting the pressing duties, and Cole Palmer is very good at pressing as well.
Yeah.
So certain games, I wouldn't do this in every game, but I think in certain games you can do it.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Like, I understand the second commandment because look, I didn't want to see Nkunku as a striker either. I thought we would actually find a buyer for him, even if it was Man United. I wouldn't have liked it because you just know he'd go there, and if he was playing as one of Amorim's 10s, I think he'd do very well. I think he would come out of this Premier League shell that he's basically in because of this unknown entity idea at Chelsea as to what he actually is. But I just don't think he's as effective on the left wing. I think there's so many mysteries with Chelsea right now. It's like you sign Felix, 6 months later you get rid of him again. It's a bit of a mystery. With Nkunku, it's the same thing because I know for a fact that he's not a bad footballer. Chelsea didn't waste their money. When he was out injured, we're like, oh, well, when Nkunku's back, it's all going to be fine because he's world class. And on his day, he can be the best player in the league. And then we kind of were shocked by Palmer, and he became that player that we just hung the hat on. So with Nkunku, I think the second commandment, this is going to be interesting to see, mate, between now and the end of the season, because I just don't think Mark Guiu has got enough yet. And I don't see
you wrong. I think Mark
I really hope you're right, you know. Yeah. I really hope you are. I don't see that chemistry because I love strikers that are like bull in a china shop, run around, do all the hard work. But like when we do have possession, I think there just needs to be a little bit more clarity from him actually with his movement into the right places so that he can even be effective.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Maresca will try Nkunku through the middle, and I hope that isn't going to be breaking the commandment enough that you have to step in and have a little word.
Well, you know, if he breaks the religious commandments, there's something very bad that's going to happen to him. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's going to be smarted. Like, the question back to you then, what is Nkunku's best position? Like, you said that he's not a winger. Like, I think Nkunku has the problem of, like, maybe this is a bad example, but almost like an Essien in that he can play right back, he can play as an attacking midfielder, he can be a DM, and so he never really got that sort of like, he never played every single match of every single season because he was all over the place, and more specialists ended up playing in those positions. I think Nkunku's got a little bit of that, you know, that itis.
I think he would have been 15 years ago. He would have been perfect. Because we'd have a Didier Drogba in the team and he could be Nicolas Anelka. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think he can be that second striker. But Chelsea, and again, I think this is why we hopefully learnt from this transfer window. And I back what you say about just not erratically going out there and spending. Because spending isn't always the solution. But I do hope that we can see, and I hope that it doesn't bite us in the arse in the sense of we don't get top 4. But, like, I'm hoping moving forward now, we're going to cherry pick the players that we need instead of just throwing money and hoping it sticks.
There is a solution here, mate. There is a solution.
Tell me. Please enlighten me, because I
laugh
am confused about this whole Nkunku thing, but I do want to know.
There is a solution. The solution is going back and playing in the way that Tommy T played. So we saw it a little bit last night. Trevor comes on. He is the right centre-back. You've got Gusto, who prefers to be a right wing-back, and that could easily be Reece James as well. Or you can play Reece James where Trevor's playing. Play Gusto as a right wing-back. Cucurella, again, let him bomb on, but let him bomb on from a wide position. Scrap the wingers, who, quite frankly, some of them are underperforming. Namely Sancho, and I think Noni in occasions is underperforming as well. I really like Neto, but again, he hasn't been the best this season, really, has he? Sack the wingers off. Play 2 10s, playing Nkunku and Cole Palmer behind Nicholas Jackson and Mark Gue. And then everything looks completely different. You've got a solid back line where you've had some porous nature of, Cole's had some bad performances. We're not sure on Tosin. Trev can look after those boys as well. Then you don't need to worry too much about the midfield because, again, they can bomb up and down. And quite frankly, Caicedo will look way better when he isn't just, a Claude Makelele number 6. When he's playing in defence, he'll look better. Enzo will look better because he's spraying passes around. He's got some natural width on that side. And then you're getting the best out of Cole Palmer and Nkunku. And they're closer to Nicholas Jackson. They probably all end up scoring more goals. So I think I've just solved it, mate. So if Maresca needs any coaching help, let me know.
You genuinely might be one of the most multi-talented individuals that I know, Mr. Aveste. I've been absolutely loving you and Joey's new channel, by the way. If you don't follow Josh's channel by himself, the link is in the description. But him and Joey's new channel, where they're basically going into like true crime, real life kind of like life experience from the both of them, segued in with like very, very cool real life things that we all kind of know about, then you'll see just how talented this individual is on the other side of the screen. I'm telling you, it's brilliant stuff, mate. I appreciate that you've given me a different insight here, because I think this whole 3 at the back thing that we kind of did see at moments in that game against West Ham, I think this is a great adaptation. I think it's a great plan B. I think it is a brilliant way for Maresca to get Chelsea not so predictable, and I think that will make us difficult to beat again. I think we've got to throw in that element of surprise to make us a team that will finish in the top 4. I appreciate your optimism, mate. I appreciate your time. You guys, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you smack a like on it. Subscribe to this channel if you're new, and all of Josh's links are in the description. I'm glad that Joey was on last week, and I'm glad that you're on this week. And can we should bring the trio together. I think people have been asking for it.
They've been asking for it, and we need to make it happen, because quite frankly, they're going to revolt if we don't do it. So we'll have
bring
to
the people what they want.
That's the third commandment, mate. The third commandment is that we have to do.
That is the third commandment. Threesomes are coming. See you soon.